Let's move on then to the thing that I know that you speak so eloquently about, which is Christianity, and more particularly its founder, because, of course, the Christian story is, yes, suffering is very real indeed, but God does care and does offer a way out of it. That's essentially the message. But let's pad that out and explore that a bit. Can you give us a feel for who you see Jesus as having been and what made him different from any number of other religious leaders of his time and throughout history?
I think there is something of a consensus among New Testament scholars today that what made Jesus different is that he came on the scene with an unprecedented sense of divine authority, with the authority to stand and speak in God's place on matters belonging properly only to God. And that's why he was eventually condemned by the Jewish Sanhedrin for blasphemy and then delivered for execution over to the Romans on the charge of treason. And so it is these allegedly blasphemous personal claims whereby Jesus arrogated to himself prerogatives belonging only to God that sets him apart from other religious teachers and figures.
And of course, it was immensely divisive. And you get New Testament warnings about party spirit. We might say in Australia today, the mob going mad. American founders were worried about the mob going mad. You see this sort of fickle human nature playing out in great divisiveness. So at one moment, he's welcomed into Jerusalem and the palm fronds are laid out and he's a hero. The next, he's on a cross after the most unjust trial you could imagine and the cruelest execution mankind's ever been able to devise. It really does contrast our ability to think reasonably and what happens when a sort of mob rule mentality takes over, doesn't it? Well, can you throw any light on the way we behave that way? Sometimes so wildly irrational.
Yeah.
At the moment, one moment in love and the next moment violently evil towards another human being.
In the case of the Passover crowds in Jerusalem, when you look at the account of Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey, in fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy, they thought that this was the coming Messiah. They thought that this was the man who would throw off Israel's enemies, and that meant Rome, and reestablish the throne of David in Jerusalem, where he would be ruling over all Jews and Gentiles alike. And during Passover week, then, Jesus, I think, proved to be a profound disappointment to these crowds who were expecting him to overthrow Rome and to establish David's throne. Instead, when Jesus was asked about paying taxes to Caesar, he gave a very anti-revolutionary response. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And so you see how that crowd was so fickle and turned against him under the instigation of the Jewish chief priests and the temple authorities, so that now they began to cry out for his crucifixion and death.
And you still see today, particularly in these troubled times, or you still hear calls for a new Messiah. What we need is a benevolent dictator. You hear it all the time. There's still this search for someone who can lead us out. And surely one of the great lessons is that there's no human being who can. There are great leaders, a Churchill, a Roosevelt, but they're not able to, if you like, introduce nirvana and peace on earth. It doesn't happen.
Right. And Jesus said the kingdom that he came to bring was not an earthly kingdom, but it was a spiritual kingdom, of which everyone who is his disciple is a member and follow him as our Lord. But it is not one that is established by force and violence and political means.
Thank you for watching this episode. We appreciate your support. If you value vital conversations like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel there and also click the notification bell to stay up to date with new releases.